So in this, we'll swing over soon to creating our own, we'll convert this into our own project soon. I just want to see if there's something else I wanted to, from our plan. So we've kind of touched on most things. Game object, right. So now this is probably going to be a bit, so basically everything in a scene, so in the hierarchy, so up the top of, we can see it says sample scene and it's got an asterisk next to it in my hierarchy view. Can you see that?
Yep.
Yep, so the asterisk means I've made changes and I haven't saved yet.
Yep.
So if I want to save, I can do Control S, or I could actually go File, Save, the same thing. Now, so the thing is, this is obviously the scene, and as I edit the scene, I've got these different objects. Every object here, whether it moves or doesn't move, is a game object.
Mm-hmm.
And so the game objects are managed by the C++ player, as they call it, for the Unity, in terms of the Unity's architecture. And but you can kind of manipulate the game object through adding components, right? So here we've got the workshop set. I can click this Add Component button in the inspector, and here I can add all sorts of different components. And so some of these components might be written in C#, or some of these might be built in some way, but most of these I think will actually be C#. So these are all provided by Unity, or are actually part of the assets that are preloaded in the project template. So the URP template gives you like this example scene and other assets. So for instance, we can see audio, and we can choose different kinds of audio sources or filters. We can have effects, all sorts of different things. We can have physics, so we can add different kinds of collider shapes. So objects can collide and bounce off each other. And we'll look at this later. There should be in here. Where is it? Oh no, it's somewhere else. And you can search for things. So for instance, as part of physics, you have a thing called a rigid body. And the rigid body gives you properties like, do you want gravity on? How do you want to handle collisions? And if you're going to have collisions, you need a rigid body on the object that can collide into other things. So it basically means it turns on physics simulation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff here.
Yeah. It's a rich thing, and it'll make a bit more sense as we start building our own project. But yeah, so the components, some of these you can ignore. So here I've got the search filter still. So a chunk of these you can kind of ignore until you need it. And if you look at the Unity manual, which from help, so we have, about, which is the usual about box. We have the Unity manual, which will tell your default browser to start up with the manual. And this will be, you can see up here, this is from a local file system. So it's not hitting the internet for that one. So we should actually have a little look at this just to show you. And actually, as we do our project, I can sort of show you which part of the manual relates to which kind of thing that we're trying to do. You might need to remind me from time to time. I could easily forget. But just so we can see how this compares.
Yep.
So it'll make a bit more sense. But the other thing you have in Unity is from help is the scripting reference. And so here you have Unity Engine. So the Unity Engine is the game engine itself. So if you want to change something about how the game's running, the engine is what the Unity Engine is the C# package that you would use, or C# namespace.
Yep.
And where's it gone? Somewhere in here there'll be. Hold on. Okay, it's changed a bit. There will be classes. That's what I want. So here they've got in the Unity Engine namespace. These are all the classes that exist in the namespace. So, for instance, we talked about transform before. So transform will be here. It's a class. Where are you? Further down, Warwick. Think about alphabet. Right. So here's the documentation for transform, which is a component. every game object in a Unity scene will have a transform component. Because the transform, if we look at properties, it has the position. So the reason is because everything in a scene needs to have a position, and if the camera's looking at it, then it knows to render it, that sort of thing.
Yeah. That's wow.
Yeah. So the cool thing about using Unity for a 3D scene, it means that you're using their rendering technologies. Like the camera does a lot of work for you. Anything it can't see, it doesn't even worry about, which helps for performance. With the audio, you might remember there was components before for audio sources.
Yep.
So you can have an audio source which could be a recorded MP3 file or something like that, and you can actually trigger different MP3 files to play. So if you want to have different sound effects for a character colliding with something, or for a shooting sound or something like that, you can make those record some sounds, and then you can play them. And so you can have code that triggers each one to play at the right time. And the cool thing about it is the Unity environment, right? If your camera, right, so if the camera's far away from that object making sounds, those sounds will sound distant.
Oh, wow.
Right, so it gives you this 3D sound effect kind of thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Clever.
So that's so there's a lot of stuff, a lot of power that you get out of the box. So in terms of, okay, you've got these game objects, they exist in the scene. Components is what make them do stuff, and that's how. And you can write your own components to manipulate the game objects. The game object is really like in true architecture. The game object is actually managed in C++ code, but it's quite basic, and it's the C# components that do most of the work.
Yep.
Yeah. One quick thing we should talk about is on the game window, there's these buttons which toggle on and off, and in terms of what you can see, this probably doesn't come through very well, but it sort of highlights in a really dim color scheme, so it's probably hard for you to see. As I click on it,
just see it, yeah.
Just barely see it, yeah. So maximize on play. When I hit play, that's what I had before, and it maximized.
Yep.
You've got mute audio, so if the audio is really annoying and loud and you don't want it, you can obviously mute it. You can do things. You can change the resolution of the game. So if you want to test for different devices, you can actually click that pull down, and you can change the virtual resolution of what the game window will render as.
Yep.
So you can set up something for like a mobile phone, and you've got different aspect ratios and all sorts of things. And you have different displays, which I think actually would be, if I do maximize and do display 2, it'll probably pop up with my other monitor. I actually haven't played with that very much, so. And then you've got scaling, so you can, as I scale, it looks like I'm zooming in, but it's just scaling the rendering.
It renders really well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty
clever.
It's quite advanced. In fact, if we go to project settings, now you probably won't have that window open. So to open a new window, you go to the window menu item.
Yep.
And then from there, it's probably under general. I always forget. It's not there. All right.
Panels.
Panels. I don't see that.
It's got project on there.
Oh, general.
No, in panels at the top in your window.
Got
a project in there.
These would be my existing panels. So
okay.
Yeah. So if I click on Test Runner, the Test Runner will, or animate. Yeah. So yeah, those would be the existing ones. Yeah. So if we go scene, now the scene view is in front. Scene. Actually, the project settings is probably the one of the different things, because actually, the edit menu has it. Edit project settings. That's probably what I should have done. I should have just done that.
Yep.
Okay, so from there, there's a
floating window. Yeah, just drag it over.
Yeah, exactly. So it would have been a floating one by default.
Yep.